I was a freshman in high school when Sandy Hook happened. I was 14. I grew up in a nice town called Orange, Connecticut, and went to high school about 10 minutes away from my house. I remember exactly where I was. It was sixth period, and we had just finished biology class. Our principal buzzed into the loudspeaker, said something along the lines of, "I apologize to report the worst tragedy in the history of our state. 26 people have been killed. 20 of them were elementary school-age children." If I'm being honest, I think I was too young to process what was happening. So we went home, hugged our parents a little bit tighter, went about our lives with a heightened understanding of the evil that was in the world. The next couple of days continued along these emotional lines. We went about our routine, but something was different, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. When I got to college in 2016, I had the opportunity to research anything that I wanted for my Introduction to American Government class. I chose guns. Something must have came over me because I don't know why I picked this topic out of everything that was available. But little did I know that this would be the topic of my research for the next 3 years. First, as a research fellowship, then as conference presentations, and now this in my senior thesis. As I started researching, I noticed an unfortunate trend in the social sciences. Scholars have a horrible tendency to alienate the non-scholar. They use looping metaphors and complicated data that lots of the times make their conclusions hard to understand. So tonight, I'm going to try and subvert this norm and take something that is complex and relevant and make it digestible to you all. I started my research with the intention of answering the following question: how do mass shootings impact American politics and society? I started digging around online and read some news articles about something new: background checks. There was this database that was established in 1998 called the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or the NICS. And what this database does is it tracks federally requested background checks. Now, after the Brady bill, a background check was required with the purchase of a firearm from a federally licensed retailer. But there are still other ways that you can get a gun that are frequently talked about. One of them is called the gun show loophole, and that's where a private seller can sell their gun to another private individual, and a background check isn't required. So this type of sale is not going to appear in the NICS totals, which means the NICS is something we refer to as a proxy measure. But this shortcoming doesn't mean that the NICS is still not a good measure to track gun sales. So I took this data and I graphed it over a year for every year between 1999 and 2018. And then I took this 20-year period and divided it up by what I considered was the era-defining mass shooting: Columbine, Virginia Tech, and Sandy Hook. Now, here's what the data for Columbine looks like. Now, pay special attention to the shape of this distribution, and in particular, how close together those bars are, and those bars represent yearly totals. Now, here's what Virginia Tech looks like. So the shape stays relatively the same, but the space between the bars is larger. And that means that the yearly totals of background checks are increasing with every subsequent year. And now here's what Sandy Hook looks like. Yeah, it's all over the place, right? So what starts to happen here is there are spikes in background checks that correspond with a mass shooting. And there are certain types of shootings where we see this behavior. Most of the time, it's with shootings where responsibility is claimed by a terrorist organization, or when coincidentally, there are talks of an assault weapons ban. So what does this mean? It means that in the aftermath of a mass shooting, people's purchasing behaviors change. There are more guns on the market, there's no legislation that gets passed, and we're back to where we started, but with more guns that are on the market. And I can attribute this to two things. One is that people are scared in the aftermath of a mass shooting, and they want to take active measures to protect themselves and their families. Another is that people lack trust in institutions to change this behavior, so they are just adapting to the new community that they live in. From a data standpoint, these conclusions suggest that we need to change our approach to mass shootings and gun sales. These changes in background checks are inorganic and should be considered when we propose policy solutions. And legislators and citizens should keep this in mind as a part of an everyday common phenomenon, since guns are not stagnant, but a fluid part of our everyday culture, with their purchasing rates rising and falling in semi-regular patterns. If we want to change this behavior, it will require an entire overhaul of the way we approach gun violence, mass shootings, and gun sales. If we want to attack it legislatively, we're going to need to find a way to curb gun violence, or at least alter our legislative approach. So if we want to alter this legislative approach and we want to try and curb gun violence before it happens, what will that take? Well, one solution is to care about each other more. States across the political spectrum have altered their gun laws in the aftermath of a mass shooting. Connecticut, California, Texas, and Florida all passed measures in hopes to curb gun violence after there was a shooting in their state. So what if we thought about community not as local or not as a state, but as national? Then a shooting wouldn't be a tragedy in a far-off state, but would be a preventable incident within our own community. If we care about each other, things can get better. And that's what this whole thing is about. It's about caring and listening to one another so we can create a safe and thriving society. And the future is bright because we are slowly getting on that right path. But just because we have started aiming at our rights for life and safety and security doesn't mean that we can stop. We can keep pushing until we bring about the change that we want to see in the world. And we reach those goals, we need to keep pushing to further secure our rights to safety and security. We are going to be the next generation of leaders. And if we work for our community, then we can create a better world. Thank you.